Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Apollo Art Analysis. Today we're going to be looking at a piece by the artist Vin Clovercreek. Clovercreek is a German digital artist working primarily within the medium of digital illustration / digital paint. And so this piece is actually the second showcase, and it's coming straight from the 2055 series, and we're going to talk a little bit about that near the end. So we're going to talk about set scale, we're going to be talking about color, we're going to be talking about the path of the lone hero, and a little bit more after that. So let's jump right into it. So in your initial introduction, you're likely met with this immense amount of scale. What you'll see is that a large majority of the spatial composition, of course, is taken up by this night sky. And the artist utilizes this negative space in order to emphasize the path of where our hero is as well. So you see this small kind of island of white Arctic here at the bottom. And that is offset by this immense amount of blue, purple, green in the spatial composition. And so that scale could also act as a metaphor to some people to say the individual hero in contrast against, say, the lone masses, because the hero is always what is defined in juxtaposition against kind of the lost masses or the lost crowd, because the hero or the individual is the one who kind of goes on that path or that heroic path in order to find something of value to everyone. So you'll see that the artist utilizes a dark on light contrast here, mainly in the form of this kind of pinkish-red cloak. Her cloak accents her form against this kind of white Arctic setting absolutely masterfully. And what that does is that really contrasts her form, that emphasizes and accents that, so that whenever you first see this piece, even if you're looking, say, up here, you can almost already see her form because that red is so striking and because it's so iconic right on that kind of snow white backing. So that really accents her form and really calls our attention to it with absolute ease. And so in the realm of color, we see, say, a mostly blue foundation here, and the artist actually notes that he used analog colors. So we have kind of blue, purplish, and a little bit of green there. And those all combined, those are kind of all together on the color wheel. And those really give this, they're set upon this kind of main foundation of blue here, right? And there's that blue foundation here that is the majority of the spatial composition. That kind of blends into this magentic purple and then blends into that emerald green in the top region. So those are really, really stunning colors. They're almost surreal, but I think this blue of that main foundation is really what calls our attention to it with absolute ease. And in this piece, there's a dense degree of fluorescence, and this fluorescence, of course, is achieved by these kind of spaceships taking off, right? And you see their trails just leave these iconic and massive streaks into the sky, and they're just taking off. We see about 5 spaceships, or we see 2 spaceships, but we see 3 streaks as well, but we don't necessarily see the forms of the spaceship. So that really, really gives the sky a bit of life, and that maybe even is exactly what casts these multitude of colors here. Maybe we can infer that the majority of the sky is black, but the accent of each individual spaceship is what kind of gives that diversity of color there in the spatial composition. So those are really energetic. You know, they almost remind of the Northern Lights, which are Aurora Borealis. And the Northern Lights, a lot of Native Americans have viewed the Northern Lights as kind of the realm of the great beyond, where a lot of their ancestors or spirits have gone. So I see a sense of divinity within this piece. Whenever you take a look at the sky in general, it really feels like it is a symbol of immortality because the sky just endlessly stretches across the horizon. And so that, in combination with the sense of scale within this work, really gives this sense of divinity, or this sense of kind of a higher order that we're looking at. And it's almost kind of ethereal or surreal there. So I think that's really important to note. And I think that can be attributed to what feels like the Northern Lights or the Aurora Borealis. And those are really, really stunning. Whenever someone sees this, they may kind of draw that connection, but they may not be able to articulate that. So I think that's important to note. You know, those really remind of the Northern Lights. And of course, those give an incredible amount of energy. What you'll see here is the streaks aren't just kind of straight curves or straight spikes. They have this kind of dynamic energy to it, kind of like a gas that's that's just kind of emitting that energy. So that, instead of it being just a straight line, because it has that curve, that does imply that sense of motion, and it gives a bit more dynamic feeling within the piece, especially whenever we're talking about, say, visual energy. So that, in combination with the color, really incites the viewer in a sense of excitement and really invigorates that visual experience. So finally, we're going to talk a little bit about the lone hero. And what you'll see is, whenever I first saw this piece, I actually didn't notice, but there is a city in the background. And so our lone hero appears to be traveling through this vast, vast Arctic landscape, and it is quite destitute, right? There is almost no sign of life. You just have her little kitty stand next to her, but she's trying to make it to the city there in the end. And whenever we're talking about a lone hero moving through, say, a desert or a tundra or some type of space of transition that is very deathly and very dark and challenging, we can see that as, metaphorically at least, we can see that as the hero moving through a challenging time in life to reach, say, the oasis or reach the city in the background. And that city can stand as a higher form of goal or an ideal that they're trying to reach. You know, they're moving through this challenging space. And whenever they reach the city, that is kind of like the safe haven, or that's the oasis. So there's always a higher goal that the hero is moving towards. And there is this feeling that the hero may be lost. Maybe not lost, but is moving through this lost area in order to find herself. And Clovercreek notes that he placed that city to give a bit of hope there, because she's not just moving into kind of this endless Arctic landscape. She's actually moving towards the city in the background there. So I think that's really important to note. And also the path of the lone hero, even in your day-to-day life. Whenever you're moving through a challenging time in life, you can see that as you moving through the desert or you moving through the tundra, and that can be quite challenging, but it's important to keep your head, and even the importance of, say, like a companion or a sense of community. We can see that in having her companion of a cat right next to her. You know, this story is super cute. I love it. It's coming straight from the story 2055, which is kind of like a mix of fantasy and science fiction, and they go everywhere. The piece that we showcased recently was portals, and we're going to take a look at that here in just a second. But you'll see that she is just kind of just her and her cat. They've been to cities that have kicked her out. They've been to the driest deserts. They've been to shipwrecks in the sea. They've seen, you know, one of the most common elements that we see in the 2055 series are these spaceships that are just kind of almost always dotting in the background. So that really gives us that sense of science fiction. And then in some of the other pieces as well, there's also a sense of, say, magic and fantasy, mostly in the form of the portals in the piece that we recently shown. So I'm going to pull up that piece, and we're going to take a look at that and see what we can kind of connect whenever it comes to Clovercreek's style and stylistic profile. Alrighty, so here's the two pieces coming straight from Clovercreek. These are the two ones that are in the Apollo Art Archive. This one came about a month or two ago, and then we now did this piece as well. Just some stunning, stunning color coming from this artist. So Clovercreek grew up around a lot of artists. I believe his grandfather was a painter. He grew up in a small town in Germany, and just an entire life he's really been dedicated to creating in different ways. And you really see that here. Of course, in this piece, we talked about contrast. We talked about kind of this ethereal color coming from these portals. And we also talked about contrast and emphasis. We talked about the path of the lone hero. And you'll see exactly how that translates to this one as well. She's been through quite a lot, and she's always moving. You'll also see the iconic triangular hat there, much greater form there. So as I said before, if you want to look at the 2055 series, you got to look at the intersection of, say, fantasy and science fiction. And if we want to say that literally, look at the ships in here. We can see that as the source of, say, science fiction, something that is very, very advanced. And then in the realm of fantasy and magic, we can look at, say, the portals here. And even a combination of that, you see spaceships through the portals, right? And so that, I think, is a really, really, really characteristic intersection of the 2025 series, or 2055 series, my apologies. So that is always combined because it's kind of like a loose narrative that controls pieces across each one. So that just connects it all together into a constant adventurous story of science fiction and magical fantasy. And so Clovercreek just creates some stunning works, definitely a very talented artist. Personally, I think Clovercreek is very underrated. I'm not sure how many followers he has on other platforms, but on Instagram, I think he is underrated for what he's creating. So whenever we're taking a look at these pieces, you see a lot of color, that painterly kind of painterly effect. You can see that in some of these landscapes as well. So just some incredible works coming from this artist. Obviously, an incredible amount of talent. Just even looking at these two pieces, they are very, very different in color and form and content, but they're coming straight from Clovercreek. So just some incredible work coming from this artist. I hope you guys enjoyed. Go check out some of 2055's other panels. There's a very long story to kind of go through, and he always writes a bit with it as well. So that's really nice to always look at, read about, and go deeper into the story every time. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys learned something. Go check out Clovercreek's some of other pieces, and hopefully we'll be showcasing another one here shortly. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. My name is Apollo. This was Apollo Art Analysis. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to support our work directly, please check out our Apollo community tokens. Apollo Art Exchange is an ecosystem of art appreciation which elevates artists each and every day. Thanks for listening.